not think that the city has any justification for doing these things out of order, much less for deciding that it has to be a phased development. These are things that should have been done in 2006, and they shouldn't hang fire for a decade or more before they're completed. I got a brief response from the city when I complained last, and eventually I had to ask for a repeat because my hearing wasn't so good. But this is an email that I just received on Wednesday, the 11th, from the city engineer. On November 15th, members of the city's legal department, including Sylvia Watson of the department's Human Relations section and 3 attorneys, toured the Packery Channel area specifically to review the site and how it complies or doesn't comply with the ADA. In short, the site meets the requirements of the ADA. That being said, the projects as outlined in the phasing program further improve upon access to the jetties. All of the entities involved are committed to completing them as outlined in the project plan. In other words, not until 2019 will anybody be able to park on the beach, get out in a wheelchair, and get to those jetties. And I think it's remarkable that they can find 4 people that can't see that. Perhaps those are the first 4 who should go. They don't have a can-do attitude. They seem to be blind in the area of handicap access. It's not that difficult for me to see it. I assume anybody looking at a map can see it. If you've ever tried to get out on the beach in a wheelchair, I would be very much entertained if you could explain to me how you would go very far in a wheelchair on simple bare sand. I don't think you'd have a problem with some of the alternatives that I've seen proposed. It's certainly possible that if you have access from a hard surface for you to get up a ramp and then over to the North Jetty someday, because there has been construction on the north side of an extension of that walkway. That walkway doesn't end just at the jetties now. It goes all the way down the whole face of the revetments on the north side. So theoretically, once they have a ramp from the parking over there, 200 spaces, mind you, once they've done that, theoretically you can get up a ramp and then follow that walkway until it gets to the North Jetty and then on out. The only problem with that is this is not equal access. Those who are not handicapped can drive up to the North Jetty on the North Beach, get out of their vehicles, climb over the rocks, and get up onto the jetty. The handicapped cannot. They will have to go quite some distance away to find an accessible point, a ramp, get onto not the jetty, but another walkway, and then follow that back until it connects with the jetties. This is kind of like what the city was proposing with Destination Bayfront. They were advocating the construction of a handicap ramp to McGee Beach. The only difficulty was that if they were also moving northbound Shoreline and its parking areas away to the opposite side of the mall down there, that meant the handicapped did have access to that ramp, but it was further away than it had ever been. You can kind of see a parallel there. This is something that's been going on for some time. If there is a public access problem that has a solution, there will be all kinds of obstacles thrown up to carrying out the solution, and I don't understand why that happens to be the case. It would have been a lot simpler, I think, just to leave northbound Shoreline alone and let the handicap park where they're parking now and build that ramp. So there you go. This is going to elaborate lengths to make things hard when they should be easy. They're not simple, but they're easy. These are solutions that are just laying around for people to pick up and run with them. But instead, again, they come up with something much more difficult, especially untimely, and very expensive. Why do it the hard way? I don't quite comprehend what the issue is. It's been my experience that when it's difficult to understand the reasons someone gives you for a project, it's probably because you're not getting the whole story. And many times, of course, I've heard this as a comeback, and it's not that brilliant a comeback when they tell you, well, you don't have the big picture. And of course, it's because they haven't filled you in, have they? Yeah, there's a big missing piece of puzzle here. Who is it that does not want access to Packery Channel, to the beach, to the jetties, to the revetments on the south side? Who could possibly profit if the public is denied these? Who profits if the handicapped can't get access to the south side? Who would have profited if we had closed off access to that beach to vehicles entirely, from the south end of the seawall to the jetties? Who would have profited from that when we had just spent some of this Packery TIF to enlarge the beach and to give us all these incredible recreational amenities? Why would we suddenly, in 2006, vote to take it all away? These are publicly funded, publicly accessible features of the beach. The whole state is in favor of driving on the beach. Why would someone want to take that away? Where is the profit in doing that? Well, if you happen to be a developer and you own property right there on the beach, one could see that. But this isn't the case. Remember, I said that all of the Packery project belongs to the state of Texas. The Texas General Land Office owns all the property surrounding the channel and the jetties and adjacent to the beach. We're out here at the south jetty of the Packery Channel project to show you a couple of things today. I know you've heard this before, but if you haven't been here, you may not understand all the little flips and flops of this situation. First thing you want to look at is the end of that jetty is not as far out from the water's edge as it originally was when it was constructed. When this project was finished in 2006, the actual water edge was back around here. If you will picture back to the left behind the porta potties, that's where the jetty really begins. And it's at that point that an issue came up, because everywhere you see that railing, there's a smooth, flat concrete walkway, which at one time was considered to be the best handicap accessible walkway on any jetty in Texas. The only catch was that in 2006, when it was constructed, there was the same thing you see here now. Bare sand in front of it, and then large pieces of rock, most of which, the cap rock, is made of granite, and under that a lot smaller material of various assortments. But the issue was then, as it is now, as good as that walkway is, and we'll walk up closer to it and show it to you in a little bit, as good as that is for accessing, for fishing, for having a great time, even if you're handicapped, From here, where we stand, where we park, you can't get there in a wheelchair. There is no hard surface for a wheelchair to run on here, and there is no ramp crossing those big blocks of granite. No way for you to do what every other individual who is parked here now, who is not handicapped, is capable of doing. They can get out and they can get on soft sand and they can walk up over that blockage. It's literally made of blocks. The handicapped on a wheelchair cannot. Let's go take a look at this wonderful handicapped accessible piece of walkway. Wonderful walkway with the great railings, terrific place to fish, but first you have to overcome the sand, and then you have to overcome the granite. I can do that. I'm not a handicap. I'd like to see somebody in a wheelchair do it. And I'll tell you another thing that was very embarrassing. A few years ago, a vessel trying to come in the mouth of that channel capsized, and 4 people went into the water. I think a couple of them made it in by themselves, and several others had to be rescued. The sand out here was so soft that the ambulance could not reach this part of the beach to park. And once they did get parked, the gurneys that they had, like the wheelchairs, wouldn't run on the sand. They had to get somebody with a 4-wheel drive pickup to pick up the gurney, bring it up here to this wonderful walkway, load the people in the gurney, put them back in the bed of the pickup, take them to the ambulance. And you see the problem. There is no way for emergencies to be handled without a ramp and without a hard surface on which to park your ambulance. That's not a good thing, and that has been the case since this project was handed over to the city since 2006 in October. 7 years have passed, and we're no further along with this. Now, come on up here if you would. Take a look out there. This is a beautiful place to fish. With all these rails and hardly any gaps between them, anybody who's made it this far has literally got it made. This is a terrific place to fish. Now, I mentioned when we first got here that the beach is further out than it used to be. If you'll pan around back to the south here, back towards the seawall, in the distance you'll see the condos and Holiday Inn and so forth. Where you see that vehicle driving down the beach at the moment is about where the beach was originally. All of this area to the left has filled in since the construction was completed in 2006. This broad span of sand is what is known as a fillet, F-I-L-L-E-T. The fillet of sand continues to grow here and on the north side of the channel because the jetties block the currents that flow along the edge of the beach. And those currents carry sand until they get to an area where there's a disturbance like this, the sand settles out. Because this is an ongoing process, eventually the fillets go all the way to the end of the jetties. Originally this jetty was 1,800 feet long. The catch is that effectively it's no longer that long. It's maybe a third less of that. Here's something to recall. When they constructed the Fish Pass jetties right up here on Mustang Island, those jetties were supposed to be the same length, 1,800 feet, but to save money, they only built them 600 feet long. And within a couple of years, the fillets went around the end of that 600 feet and filled in the channel, and like that, the project silted up. And there hasn't been a boat down there since. can't because the sand got there. The situation with the fillets is that they have to be maintained, just like you have to maintain the channel. If you don't maintain the fillets, they fill in the channel, and what is a reasonable rate of channel dredging maintenance becomes a hideously expensive and darn near continuous process. You've got to get that fillet and that fillet out of there. We've got a good place for it to go, right in front of the seawall. At the moment, the seawall and the beach in front of it are not that big a problem because at the moment they're about 200 feet wide at minimum. Out here, you're looking about hundreds.